Hi and welcome to the September 22 buy-to-let mortgage market update. My name is Richard Purnell from The Mortgage Home. We are your buy-to-let experts. Okay, let's get straight into Market Watch and interest rates. What is going on? Well, first of all, I would like to just rewind a little bit for those that have maybe been living on a different planet. So interest rates have been going up now since December of last year. We've had 6 Bank of England rate rises since then. So clearly that has had a huge ripple effect, which I'm going to come on to shortly. The next Bank of England meeting has actually been delayed slightly due to the Queen's death. And so that's on the 22nd of September. So at the time of recording this, I don't yet know what is going to happen. But again, I'll get my best prediction out shortly. Current base rate, we're at 1.75% now with the Bank of England rate. But I mean, that's pretty meaningless, isn't it? What does that mean for you and I? What does that mean in terms of mortgage rates? Well, probably the best way of describing this is saying, well, since the beginning of this year, pretty much on average, interest rates have doubled. So that sounds alarming. And it is, and I get that it's hurting many thousands of landlords in their pocket, including me. But is that the end of it? I guess that's the next sort of question. So my view is that come the next Bank of England meeting, there will be another rate rise. The factors that are influencing the Bank of England to push rates up at the pace they're doing are not going away. In fact, we're right in the thick of it right now, and there's going to be more pain before we can come out the other end. So I think for sure there's going to be a rate rise, could even be a 0.5% rate rise when the committee meet on the 22nd. And I don't think that's going to be the end of it. I think there's going to be more rate rises this year, at least one more rate rise before the end of the year. We might even see 2. And sadly, I think for us landlords, there's going to be more rate rises into early next year, which does sound really doom and gloom. However, I will be coming on to opportunities later on in this presentation, so do bear with me. Now, the other thing I just want to point out is that even though we've got rates at 1.75%, and as I said a few minutes earlier, mortgage rates have doubled in this last, 7 or 8 months. So that is clearly alarming, but let's just take a little step backwards and look at the wider context here of mortgage market history. Because as my last bullet point on this page is saying, we are considerably below the long-term market average. Now, I know this is going to be small consolation to people right now, because the fact is that you are paying more for your mortgage, and I get that, which is why I do want to talk about, well, what can we do about it? What opportunities are there a little later on in this presentation? But I do think it's useful just to reflect for the next few moments about the history. And this slide does represent it quite well, in that for those of us that have been landlords for a long time can see that where we're at right now is not normal. The typical Bank of England rate from this graph alone is probably 4.5%, 5%, which means mortgage rates must have been on average 6 or 7%. So we're still well below that. And the banks and the buy-to-let lenders know this. They know that this last 10 years has been highly suppressed for lots of reasons after the crash of 2008. And that when they are assessing applications, they apply this stressed rate. And that means they're applying a lot higher rate than the actual rate that you and I are paying to decide whether that looks like they want to lend on that property and the strength of that rent. And we should be learning. It's something I've said on many of these video presentations in the past, that as landlords, we should be doing those same stress tests to potential properties we're looking to buy, not getting drawn into these artificially high profits because our mortgage costs have been suppressed and low, and thinking it's a good deal right now. We've got to say, is it a good deal when we're paying 5, 6, 7% for our mortgages, and taking the decisions off the back of that? I guess that's not going to help with existing portfolio, but going forward, we have to adopt that if we're going to stay in this particular market. I want to also talk about the property market, because what we're hearing all the time now from commentators and on the internet with various websites is this property crash that's looming. There's a property crash coming. And I want to give you my take, my humble opinion on what I think is going to happen to the property market. Absolutely, it's slowing down. That's no doubt. We look at Rightmove. I've just put here that one of their headlines taken from August. So that's obviously the latest data, is that the property prices actually dropped in August for the first time in a long time. It was only a 1.3% drop, but it was a drop. And that's enough, again, for commentators to jump on that and say this is the beginning of the collapse of the property market. Now, my view is that if you look back at property prices, they've always been seasonal. And you wouldn't expect property prices to be going up in December. That's when people are taking time out and doing other things. August is exactly the same. It's our main UK summer month. That's the month when we're not viewing houses, we're not putting offers in on properties. So it's natural that there's a slight dip. If we look back at previous years, we'll always see August time taking that little bit of a dip. So I don't buy into the fact that seeing that 1.3% drop is the start of a crash. You know, you might also be saying, okay, Richard, I get that looking at 1 month in isolation doesn't mean that you extrapolate that as to some end of the world or doomsday scenario. But what about when we're looking over a whole year? And again, I've been seeing a number of commentators taking statistics and trends over a year and making some conclusions that we are again about to hit this property crash. And one of them is this statistic that I picked up earlier this week. And this is where the annual growth, which was at 12.8%, has now dropped, a massive drop to 7.8%. Now that is a huge drop, and therefore that's enough for a lot of people who perhaps have got their own agendas, if we're being a little cynical, want to put that sensational headline in place so that we either click on their website or we subscribe to their particular media sort of outlet. So what I want to do is get under the surface of this and tell you that why the drop is actually happening, and it's not for the reasons that we think. And this next graph, I think, sort of encapsulates it. So I've taken this, and this is where these statistics have come from. This is the source of that data. It's the Office of National Statistics. And it's the last 2 years property price growth over that period. Now, the first thing I want to point out, if you can actually see my little arrowhead, is this. And this is the drop that's been mentioned on that previous slide, and that commentators are jumping on to say this is the property crash about to happen. It's this large drop. Now it's June 22. And the reason it's June is that the ONS takes some time to collate the data and to make sense of it and to publish it. So there's always a time lag. So June is the latest data that the ONS are working on, and that hence these commentators are also using to make these grand assumptions. So there's a huge drop, but this is based on a 12-month trend. Now, so therefore, we've got to look back, because here, 13 months ago, in June 21, we had a huge increase in property prices, going up to around a 13% increase from the previous month that looks to be about 8%. So we had in 1 month alone, over a 5% increase in property prices in the UK. That's clearly a huge jump in June 21. And that huge increase has now fallen off that 12-month average. So hence, we're now seeing a fall 13 months later because that June 21 increase has now disappeared. So the June 2022 drop that commentators are hailing as the start of the property crash is a direct consequence of something that happened 13 months ago, not what's happening in June 22. And what happened 13 months ago, June 21, is the end of the stamp duty pause. And that's where, if you recall, there was a rush to buy properties back in June before July was the phasing in of the stamp duty rules right through to the end of September, and then October was the hard stop where the new stamp. So it's all about tax incentives stopping in June, which forced this herd mentality of people rushing in to buy properties. Would you believe to say save a few £1,000s on stamp duty, but on average they paid an extra 5% on the purchase price? Makes no sense when you look at it logically, but we're not logical. So many of us buy with our hearts, and therefore it's interesting now to look back with hindsight how people actually overpaid for their houses just to save the tax bill. But that's the reason why we're now seeing the annual trend of property prices dropping is completely down to what happened over a year ago. So that is certainly my view on that. What is happening though is that landlords are definitely starting to exit the market. So what's going on here? I've talked about the obvious. We've got mortgage interest rates now. You're paying twice as much as you were 8-9 months ago. Clearly, there's a squeeze on your profits from that point of view. But there's other factors at stake as well. We've got the threat of Section 21 ending. For those that don't know what that is, that's the no-fault eviction notice that as landlords, we've always had that option. If they're no longer tied into a tenancy, we could have always exercised Section 21. We don't have to give a reason. We just want to end your tenancy because whatever, we've changed our minds. We want to sell the property as vacant possession. We want to use it for something else. And the government are now proposing to put a bill through Parliament that will scrap that, which clearly shifts the control and power to tenants. So from a landlord's perspective, that's a bad thing. We've had now since 2016 through to 2020, these punitive, almost draconian tax changes that have absolutely hammered landlords over those 4 years and that are fully implemented now. We're all being hurting from the impact of those changes in the tax rules. We've got the potential EPC changes coming in the next few years, but we're having to get our ducks lined up now if we believe those EPC changes are coming in, and actually start putting our hands in our pocket and spending capital on upgrading the properties to hit that C or B or A rating for the EPCs, and doing all the energy efficiency projects that we need to do on our portfolio if we want to be in a healthy condition to meet those rules coming in 2025. And again, so there's landlords making lots of decisions that they feel this combination of all these threats is just too much, and they're exiting. Now, if we just take a step back for a second, the one thing that I really notice about all the thing I've said on this particular page is that of all the different ways that we as property owners can make profits through property, and there are so many ways, aren't there? There are so many strategies out there to make money out of property. We can do flips, we can do conversions, we can buy at discount, add value, and then either refinance or indeed then sell the property. We can title split. We can get properties as holiday lets. We can get properties as service accommodation. We can do lease options. There are so many different ways to make money out of property. But you know, the one strategy that all of these things affect is family lets. Out of all those different strategies, many of what I've just discussed sidestep some of these threats, but not family lets. And clearly, that's the dominant type of strategy for obvious reasons for the last 25 years. So here's the question. Where's the opportunity? Diversifying your portfolio rather than exiting now and selling up in the near future, and everything that you've hoped and the hard work for your retirement and your pension, just stopping that now and cashing in your chips, as it were, at this point in time, and at a time when probably is not of your choosing, because you feel you've got a gun to your head. But what opportunities could there be? What could we do to counter what these threats that are facing you family-let landlords? Well, there are already more properties coming on the market. The national estate agents are telling us that landlords are starting to sell up. So you're getting this increased supply of stock coming onto the market, which means you're not necessarily going to get best prices. So why not actually, rather than sell, actually look at buying now? Is it not an opportunity to buy, perhaps at discount, if you've got tired landlords who are almost a little desperate to sell because they haven't got the money to upgrade, they haven't got the money to meet all the energy efficiency changes. So there may be opportunities to buy at discount. The BRRR deals, I'm hoping most of you understand the acronym, but essentially that's buying, refurbishing or renovating, remortgaging and renting out. So essentially, and that means getting it at a discount, adding some value. Hopefully then you've got low leverage, good loan to values in there, which means that you're retaining more of your profit on those types of properties. What about reviewing your portfolio and saying, well, actually, maybe we can repurpose some of the portfolio. It might be with SA, serviced accommodation, that these types of properties tend to be in city areas, urban areas to start with, which may well be where your buy-to-lets are, and therefore could you use them for serviced accommodation? Now, this is a general comment, so treat this with a slight sort of pinch of salt, but the figures can look quite startling, is that the differential between the profits from serviced accommodation property to a buy-to-let, and I'm talking about the same size of property, your same type, you know, 3-bedroom semi, a 3-bed terrace, could be 4 times as much. You know, on average, you're taking around 2.5 to 3 grand of profit on a family let. You could be looking at 10,000 a year plus on the right SA property. Have you really looked at it and done your homework? Have you spoken to a specialist SA agent to see whether your buy-to-let or 1 or 2 of them within your portfolio actually do lend themselves to SA usage? Because you know what? If they do, not only have you got those higher profits I've just talked about, but there's extra benefits. You may well be eligible for small business rate relief, so you're not paying business rates. And the other thing that I certainly haven't got time to go into today, but do look into it. Look back on some of my videos. I can't remember, maybe 3-4 months ago, I did quite a spotlight on capital allowances. And that's a real eye-opener. Excuse me, if you're not aware of those, where it may well be applicable if you change the usage to service accommodation, that all of a sudden that opens up some amazing tax breaks and incentives that are not applicable when it's a normal family let. So surround yourself with property professionals, surround yourself with people who understand this market and get some high quality advice before you decide that the right answer is to sell. Genuinely, please think twice before you follow the sheep. If other people, the landlords are starting to sell, before you think, yeah, the property market must be collapsing, I've got to sell now. Please just take a step back. As Warren Buffett said, you know, don't necessarily follow the herd. If everyone is trying to sell up, maybe, just maybe, that's the time to buy. And just to finish off, if that resonates with anybody, if anybody does want to have a further chat with any of the team, we'd be delighted to have a completely free appointment with you guys. Have a chat. There's a link here. So by all means, pause the video and write down that link. That'll take you straight to our diary system. Listen, we are really, really busy. It's a massively chaotic world we're in right now. And so we are booking up sometimes 1 to 2 weeks in advance. So please be patient. Book in if you do want to have that review. If it is something really urgent, if you have put an offer in on a property, perhaps give the office a call and we'll absolutely do our best to get you in so that we can help and support you. As always, I just give you guys a brief summary of the scope of the services that we offer. Frankly, anything that's secured on bricks and mortar, and you can see the list there. I'm not going to go through it. So if you want any advice in any of those areas, we're delighted to give you our view and our professional advice. Other than that, the only thing I've not mentioned here is that as a company, our bread and butter is also to give advice around life insurance, income protection, which at times like this could be something you really want to think about for peace of mind and security. If that's something you want to chat about, please, again, use that same diary system. We have mortgage appointments and protection appointments. So choose the one that sort of dominates your thoughts at the moment, and we'd be delighted to help on that. Other than that, thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. We'll see you next time, hopefully on the October mortgage update. And before now and then, do invest with knowledge and invest with confidence.